called A Hit and Run of Wall Street on Commercial Real Estate Ownership. So I was reading this article in CoStar by Mark Heshemer about how Moody's considers downgrading 6.2 billion in commercial-backed security loans. And if mortgage-backed security, rings any bells, in 2008, it was a major player of the financial crisis, except on the residential side, mainly because the banks were extremely reckless in their loan criteria. But in this case, it seems like maybe it's the commercial landlords that are the bad guys, and we're going to explore that. And as we get through here, basically the largest exposures in hotel and retail, which is pretty obvious given the pandemic and the actions that the state and federal government has taken to try to curb it. This isn't really something that wasn't foreseen. So based off an article like this, you might think, okay, so basically these owners took out big loans and bought commercial properties and they're over-levered, and now this is why they're all cannibalizing and why this whole debt crisis is going to happen. But if you kind of take a step back and look at the bigger picture, this starts with the Fed, in good faith, offering to purchase some corporate bonds, basically get some debt off the balance sheets of these companies, especially during a time like this, offload that to the Fed's balance sheet and allow them to have the liquidity they need to stay in business, mainly to pay employees and keep the cash flow going. All of us are making sacrifices in our lives to try to keep, the economy going, although in shambles, but just, rent payments when you can, pay your employees when you can. It's survival. And that's what the Fed offered these businesses. In fact, it went as far as the Federal Reserve had $1.1 trillion of assets they bought from Wall Street in order to try to lay this off and sort of push off some of these losses. And this was supposed to bring the security to the commercial mortgage-backed market, given the fact that these companies would have liquidity to kind of keep operations going, in a sense, until we were able to take off these restrictions and get the economy open again. But what ultimately happened is you have companies, using Ford as an example, that this debt they got off their books was just garbage. And it was misled. And mainly the biggest driver of this, ironically, was it was all mostly from share buybacks. And now you have ownership stuck holding the bag, if you will, because, you have this article where it talks about the impact on commercial backed securities, which has nothing to do with as much as the ownership's failure to be responsible in investing, but Wall Street, people that took the risk to purchase land, build buildings for these tenants, and then give them lease terms, who have now basically had the finger stuck to them as they take government aid but then refuse to pass it through the line, breaking the system we all participate in. And so what's really the point in this? And the reason I made this video was after I spoke with a friend, client, and a property owner. He was about to go into a negotiation with a very reputable coffee company I won't name, with a drive-through location, and they're trying to justify why they shouldn't have to pay rent. And some of the talking points we went through were just, first of all, pulling up the company's balance sheet, looking at it from a, even if it's just a few years in a row, to know that A, they have the cash, B, they're actually in business during this time point. They're not like my neighbor's small businesses who are literally closed because they can't even afford to even operate at break even. In addition to, did they receive government funding in the first place? And when we kind of put all these points together and into an argument, there was really no way, and it honestly came down to a moral obligation to stick to their contractual agreement. So this is something I've been working on the past few days, is helping, smaller time landlords be able to stand up to their corporate tenants. Like when you have your triple net lease, Taco Bell, and they're trying to not pay you on something, that payment is ultimately sticking the investor with the most amount of liability, when all they've done this whole time is actually been on, the right side of the transaction. And, with our brokerage, we really push to stand up against that, but also work on favorable solutions.